Good morning, I'm Deborah Pinkerton.
And I'm Jeff Coleman. Welcome to this very special edition of Morning Light as we see the power of forgiveness lived out.
In Paul's letter to the Romans, he wrote, "Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good." A challenge to live lives opposite a culture fueled by revenge and retribution.
And it's in choosing to forgive, assigning ultimate justice to a divine court, to God. There are few modern examples of this way of living, but we found some, following Jesus' command to love your enemies and bless those who persecute you.
On September 15, 1963, Christians in Birmingham, Alabama experienced the power of forgiveness, and their actions changed the world. On that morning, during a period between Sunday school and church, a bomb exploded and 4 young girls died. This became an inflection point in the struggle for civil rights for Black Americans.
So I recently traveled to the famous 16th Street Baptist Church and sat down with Dr. Carolyn McKinstry. For decades, Carolyn's wrestled with hard questions about what it means to be a Christian who forgives. She was 15 at the time of the blast, and we spoke just feet from where she dropped to the ground when that bomb exploded. The first 15 years, the before the bombing, what was your home life, your community life, your church life like?
So all 3 of those areas repeated themselves, if I can say it that way. What the instructions and the discipline that I received from my grandparents was not different from what I received from my parents, and was not different from what I received from this church. That we were all taught to love each other, not to mistreat other people, not to talk about other people. I can honestly sit here and tell you that my grandparents never once talked about white people as such, never did. But we had no interaction unless you went in the store to buy something. But we didn't cross paths with whites. And I never saw white children. White children, the schools began their day at 7:30 a.m. In our schools, our day began at 8:15 a.m. So they were already in place when we got to school. In the evening, white schools were dismissed at 2:30. My schools were dismissed at 3:15. So there was never any crossing of paths or interaction. Even in the movie theaters, when they did integrate the theaters, the whites sat on the main floor and the blacks sat in the balcony. And there was a different door and stairway from the balcony that went outside than the one on the main floor that went outside. You know, early on, this church became a sanctuary for me. So I started working with everything. When I was a kid, you know, I did vacation Bible school. I was the Sunday school secretary by the time I was in the 7th grade. And then in Birmingham, we could not use the public libraries. So we got many of our members to start donating books, and I became our librarian. So I just found so many things that I really enjoyed doing here, not to mention the constant flow of people coming in. I would have the honor of escorting them to the pastor, you know, 15 years old. So I liked being here. I liked the sanctity of it, and I felt that I was doing something useful. And I had learned a lot of the protocols from my grandfather. In the summers, when I would stay with them, we did vacation Bible school all summer, and I helped my grandmother organize the program. Many of the children down in that area couldn't read, so when they did devotion, I would always read the scripture. And so it played a big role in my life. I really felt grown up and important coming down here.
As you just heard, the church was at the center of Dr. McKinstry's world outside of school. She just made her profession of faith to follow Jesus and was really beginning to take her faith pretty seriously.
Dr. McKinstry's recollections of what happened on that Sunday morning are still vivid. She recalls the conversation she had with the 4 young girls minutes before the bomb exploded in the church.
And then she also described that ominous phone call in the church office and the subject of the Sunday school lesson that morning. You have this event. In September of 1963. I know you've told this story hundreds of times and written about it, but we're in the spot, we're in the place. Take me back to that Sunday morning, and what happened?
I arrived at church at 9:30 with two brothers and put them in their classes and came upstairs, retrieved all the Sunday school books, passed them out, and the offering envelopes. And then I went and sat in my class. Our lesson for that morning was A Love That Forgives, from the text of Luke 24. And we studied that lesson, and about 10:15, I left my class. They were still going over the lesson, but I had to walk around and pick up the offering, the attendance report. I passed the bathroom where the girls were. It was youth day. I spoke to them. Everybody was wearing white. I spoke to them, came up those stairs. At the top, right there where the door is, there's 2 or 3 steps there. I stepped down, and I think I stopped in the office first. The phone was ringing, and there was a male caller on the other end that said...
You answered the phone?
I answered the phone. When I came in that morning, Miss Shorter had been complaining about phone calls, and she was about 75 years old. But
she was the church secretary?
She was the clerk.
The clerk, okay.
And I just thought she was just being nervous or something. I really just kind of looked at her sideways and went on. I learned later from reading the FBI transcripts, because they came and interviewed all of us. Her transcripts were saying she had been receiving a lot of aggravating calls that morning. People were known to call and hang up, or call and tell you they were going to bomb something and hang up. And sometimes they happened and sometimes they didn't. The caller on the other end said 3 minutes and hung up. And I hung the phone up and just continued. I was coming out here to get the adult offerings and things, but I took what we know now to be about 15 steps before the church exploded. We didn't have...
What was that sound like?
It sounded like a bolt of lightning.
I see.
And the first thing that came through my head was thunder. I thought it was lightning striking something, and this glass over here came crashing in. And then I heard people screaming, and somebody said, "Hit the floor, the floor."
Who was in the sanctuary?
Who was here were those the adult Sunday school classes, just scooted up under there. And I could do that then, just scoot under there. I was tiny enough. And I was just under there listening. And I came out and peeked, and I saw that people were beginning to run out front. So we went out that way, and the first thought I had was to find the 2 brothers. And I went looking for them. I did not find them, but we found them later. They were not hurt. Someone had encountered them and kept them and called my mom eventually. Eventually, my father would get us all picked up. We had the 1 car. I would not learn until about 2:30 that same day that the girls didn't make it out of the bathroom.
I can't imagine going through something like that. What were the days after this like for her?
They were stunningly hard. She went into a deep depression, a quiet despair. She went back to school Monday. There was no grief counseling. Nobody talked about it for years.
Wow, no time to really process
Not at all.
it. Well, Lisa McNair wasn't alive when her sister Denise died tragically at age 11. The world Lisa grew up in already changed in significant ways. Civil rights laws unlocked doors to opportunities her sister never had.
So I sat down with Lisa in front of a park across the street from 16th Street Baptist Church in a beautiful space memorializing the events before and after the death of her sister and the 3 other girls. Lisa has lived with the heavy tragedy on one hand and the knowledge of God's goodness on the other. She's something of an expert in managing that incredible tension.
Denise McNair, one of the 4 girls, the youngest of the 4, was my older sister.
Did you know her?
I did not know her. I was born, my parents had tried to have many kids. My dad's one of 12, so they wanted to have lots of kids. But as you can see, she died when she was 11. So that immediately meant they either decided not to have a lot of kids or they didn't, or they lost them. So my mother would always miscarry. And so they'd been trying for many, many years to have kids, but could never carry to term. And so you can imagine how terribly upset
This was
they
the
were.
miracle baby.
This was, she was, a miracle baby, but then nothing else. So they probably thought, like people now who grapple with infertility issues, I might not be able to have any more kids. And then when you take your child to Sunday school, as you're supposed to do, and worship the Lord, and they kill her. And so you think you may not have any more children.
Right.
But God is good, and He is faithful. And almost exactly 1 year from the day she was murdered, I was born.
Wow.
And then 4 years later, more tries, more miscarriages, and even a stillbirth. At 40, my mother gave birth to my younger sister.
Wow.
Yeah. So the both of us being here is literally a God miracle.
Yeah.
Certainly so many miracles, but also so tragic that she never met her sister.
She wrote this beautiful book, Letters to the Dear Denise, Letters to the Sister I Never Knew, where she writes letters about what happened in her life. Imagine not being able to tell your sister about all that you processed in the events since she left the earth.
Yeah, so touching that she did write a book.
We're learning more about the other young girls who died in the bombing. Dr. Carolyn McKinstry grew up with all the girls who perished. To get an understanding of why the loss was so deep, she takes us back to those very difficult days.
Somebody today could hear this and say, that makes me so angry. But you grew up generally happy before the bombing, right?
Right. Right. The bombing is what started me to thinking about all of it. And it wasn't the bombing, the one across the street from my house. It was this one, because all 4 of these girls were friends of mine.
Yeah.
Cynthia Wesley's father was my principal in elementary school. He was a deacon here at this church. They adopted Cynthia, but she was my friend from the day they brought her to their home. They brought her here, and we just grew up together. Denise McNair, Lisa's dad was my high school teacher in the 9th grade. Lisa wasn't born then. And I tell Lisa sometimes when she was a baby, her mom would bring her in the church and put a blanket on the floor. Her mother had a beautiful voice and she sang in the choir. And Lisa would just sit on the floor and eat her toes or whatever. And anybody that was sitting around, if she wanted to be picked up, would pick her up. But her mother had a really difficult time, even with Lisa being born, had a difficult time getting over the death of Denise. Then there was Carol Robertson. Carol Robertson was a Girl Scout, had every badge, had earned every badge, was 14, and a student in school. I mean, didn't talk much, quiet person. All of these girls were what I might call stellar students if I were a teacher in terms of behavior and potential of where they might go. Addie's family had 4 girls here. Addie was killed. But the other 3 sisters, 2 of them, let me tell you about each one of them. The oldest, Janie, managed to escape any harm and went home, and today appears to be a fairly normal person. Junie escaped all harm, went home, but was later asked to identify Addie, and was never the same. To this day, was never the same. And one of the things that she said to me was, she said, "Carolyn, I didn't know that was Addie. If I hadn't seen the shoe on her foot, I wouldn't have known." And Denise's mother and father that suffered tremendously, was their only child, and until they had Lisa and her sister. Because Birmingham was segregated by law, everyone knew everyone else. A lot of the people here were my teachers in school. They were my friends from the neighborhood or from somewhere around, but everybody knew everybody. But it's one thing, we knew about the bombings because we could hear them every day. But when this one happened, this was the first time that anybody was killed. And that was the trauma of it all, pretty much for everyone.
Dr. McKinstry struggled with the loss for 20 years after the bombing. She couldn't sleep. She went into a deep depression. She turns to alcohol. And then one day she falls on her knees and surrenders completely, asking God to take away her struggles.
And I'm sure many people struggled after this bombing.
Deborah, the bomb radius around this emotionally, physically, spiritually, around what happened. Remember, this was the 50th bombing. The next one would happen across the street from Carolyn's house. So this was a perpetual state of anxiety for people in Birmingham.
Constantly living in
Constantly,
fear.
yeah.
Well, the Ku Klux Klan was responsible for the bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church. Dr. McKinstry couldn't understand how members of the KKK and those championed segregation could read from the same Bible and come to such different conclusions about whether one race was better than the other.
Well, in the end, Dr. McKinstry concludes that faith without the evidence of love isn't faith at all. She points back to what her father and grandfather had to say about God's greatest commandments.
You talk about reading out of the same Bible, the same scriptural text, maybe a different interpretation, maybe a different commentary, maybe different denomination, but the same words. What was your understanding of what the gospel was as a 15-year-old when you were getting baptized up front in this church, of who Jesus was, what the gospel was, and who you were?
So my grandfather started with the greatest law. The greatest law is to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul. But then, before he finishes that, he said, but the second greatest law is like unto it. Or the second law is pretty much the same. Love your neighbor as yourself. And if you can do these two things, you pretty much will have accomplished what the Bible teaches from Genesis to Revelation. If you can do these two things, you're probably going to be all right. If you can love God, not any other false idols, right? Just love the Lord your God and treat your neighbor the way you want to be treated. This was what my father taught us. Carolyn, if you don't like it, chances are I'm not going to like it either. If you don't want it said to you, why would you say it to someone else? Or if you don't want it done to you, why would you do it to someone else? This was just flat out lawlessness, the things that were happening when I was a kid. Does somebody really have to tell you not to bomb somebody else's house? I mean, really? And think about the fact this church bombing was number 50. There were 49 bombings in Birmingham before the church was bombed. This was number 50. And number 51 was the bombing across the street from our house where we lived. We were awakened at 3 in the morning to the bombing of the Crowell house, T.L. Crowell. He had 2 sons that were part of the American Friends program. They were living with white families up north. Eventually one went to Dartmouth and the other one went to Yellow Springs, Ohio. But when they came home, they brought their friends with them. And it was noticed that they brought their friends with them. You see, we were segregated by law. By law. It was against the law. So rather than have a policeman remind you, they just bombed the house.
Well, Dr. McKinstry shared her belief that God makes no mistakes, that every life has deep worth and value.
Well, I found it very interesting that she received graduate degrees in theology. This was really a personal quest for her.
It was a very personal quest because she really was trying to reconcile these two different views of how God treated human beings. In the end, she found answers and she found a deep relationship with God.
Yeah, that's certainly wonderful. Well, Dr. McKinstry accomplished her own personal quest. The McNair family had to come face to face with the news that the final suspect was convicted. This happened 38 years after the bombing.
So Lisa explains how her parents had to choose to love and forgive or hate. It would set the course for her family and for generations that followed and lived in Birmingham.
So when you found out from the newspaper who your sister's killers were, and the trials are going on, and the FBI reports are coming out, and it's just this slow decade after decade leak of information. How did your parents, how did your pastor, how did the people around you help you be a Christian with that information and not just turn that into fuel? I mean, because I'm hearing love from you, what I'm not hearing is hatred. How did you stop that from becoming the poison that destroyed you?
My parents, they were the model for that. You know, they taught us to love instead of hate. And it's so funny, I have a younger sister now, and so we talk about this kind of thing sometimes, and sometimes we go back to like, well, I don't remember mom and daddy saying that. Or mama didn't say that to me, she said that to you. Right. And, but I was talking about this same topic one day, and she was listening as I was giving a speech, and she said, you know, they really didn't teach us to hate. They taught us to love. And she said they always did that. And I guess that was her first time really thinking through that. But that's who they were, and that's what they did. You know, that's how they lived it. That's how they lived it. You know, and part of how they lived it, of course, was their faith. But my father didn't go to 16th Street with my mom. He went to a small Lutheran church that had maybe 200 members all total, all black, except for 5 people. And the 5 people that were not black, that were white, were the pastor, his wife, and 3 kids. Wow. They were white in the 60s. So the Elwangers were their names. Wonderful people. They're still living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But knowing them that they loved us, that they were white, they loved us, they were friends of ours, we were in their house, and they were in our house visiting for often, which was illegal back then. It gave us the opportunity to know that not all white people were evil. Not all white people were bad, and some of them could love us and be our friends. So it was a bigger picture thing. There's always hate. You always want to hate somebody if they do something to you, or, you know, our tendency as human beings sometimes is to vilify people. But, you know, at the end of the day, if we do that, we have to vilify ourselves, because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And everybody got stuff they need to work on. But that was a lesson for us to see, okay, you have to take each white person you meet on face value. You can't put them all in a box. You may meet another one and find out that that person is evil and hateful and a racist. But then what do you do with that? Do you just stay away from them? Do you curse them out? Do you call them everything but a child of God? Do you tell everybody that you know they evil? Or do you sit down and have a conversation with them and try to figure out, well, now, why do they think like that? Why are they hating like that? What is the point of why they do that? Maybe they just don't know any black people. Maybe they listen to their grandmama and their granddaddy and they don't know what I know. And maybe you can break that yoke that covers them and they can change their heart. It's a process that we have to continue to do. People ask me all the time, why do you continue to travel and speak all over the country and all over the world about this? Don't you get tired of it? Are you taking care of yourself? Because I know it's painful a lot.
Right.
But you know, if I could talk to hundreds of people every week, I would do it. If I would wear myself out doing it, if I could reach everybody.
Such encouraging words, really. We need more people like Lisa in this world.
The Elwangers, the Lutheran pastor and his family, made a deliberate choice to live in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. Lisa is making a conscious choice about attending a church of 6,000 predominantly white worshipers. A lot to learn from deliberately making a choice to love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what happened 62 years ago should set an example of how believers should handle conflict.
Following the bombing, crowds gathered on the street. They were angry, they wanted revenge, they wanted retribution. But it was the pastor, Reverend John Cross Jr., who reportedly picked up a bullhorn and, while sobbing, began to read and recite the words of the 23rd Psalm. In our final moments together, Dr. McKinstry says the Bible is the foundation for reconciliation.
School shootings, all kinds of violence in American cities today, a country very divided. But you talk about these twin principles of forgiveness and reconciliation, and you say that they come out of Scripture. But people hearing this story could say, but that's not practical. You have to live in the real world, and Christianity can be an ideal, but you can't live it out practically this way. What do you say to people that really can't see the horrors of the world that could be met with the forgiveness of Christ and the Christian spirit of reconciliation?
So the first thing is that I think the intention of Christianity and the Bible is that we do live it out. You can live it if you want to. We are free will beings. Here's something I like to say about the state of things. At any point in time in history, and this is my belief, the state of the country is the state of the church. And the state of the church is the state of the country. The Bible is not difficult to understand. If you try to exegete the text in Hebrew and Greek and go back to those original meanings, then it really, you're digging and it really takes some serious time.
Sure.
But in general, it's not difficult to understand love your neighbor as yourself.
What about the love your enemy?
Love your enemy.
How do you do that? How did you do that? I mean, this is fire hoses, bombings, loss of your best friend. I mean, it's a long, long list of offenses against you. And then love your enemy. As you've studied it these many years since 1963, what does that look like? How do you practically do that?
Well, it's a commitment. It's a spiritual commitment. It's a spiritual discipline.
Do you pray for enemies, or how do you do that?
Well, we're told to pray, love our enemies,
Yeah.
pray for them that despitefully use you, misuse you. Yes, yes. But it takes discipline to do that. It takes discipline. So I will have to give an account of if I bombed someone's house, if I murdered someone.
So is that what you're doing? You're giving the justice and the judgment piece to God, and then is that what frees you to love?
Yes, you said it so beautifully.
Well, 16th Street Baptist Church is now led by Philadelphia native Reverend Arthur Price Jr. He says despite the church's great history, Jesus is the main attraction.
We must remember, as it says in Ephesians 4:32, we must forgive each other as Christ God forgave us.
And some final thank yous. This story would not have been possible without the help of the 16th Street Baptist Church, the Alabama Department of Archives and History, Dr. Carolyn McKinstry, and of course, Lisa McNair.
We want to thank you for watching this special edition of Morning Light.
Go check on your neighbors, and we'll see you again real soon.